Today, we're going to look at the life of John Bunyan and see how no suffering allowed by God's providence is ever wasted. Through Bunyan's pain, we discover the mysterious fruit that grows only in the winter of affliction. In his work, Seasonable Counsel to Sufferers, Bunyan wrote, "Sometimes before we suffer, we think we could walk upon the sea. But when the wind begins to blow, we find ourselves sinking. Yet can we say that such trials bring us no good? We cannot live without these changes of seasons appointed by God. For trees in countries without winter may grow tall, but they bear no fruit." This metaphor is deeply profound. Bunyan compares suffering to winter and spiritual maturity to fruit. In other words, the fruit of faith is born only when we pass through the cold season of trial. Without winter, there can be no harvest. For Bunyan, prison was not merely a theological idea. It was the living laboratory of faith. In that dark cell, he encountered the invisible God as living reality. He once testified, "I saw with the eyes of my soul Jesus Christ at the right hand of God. He is my righteousness. Therefore, wherever I am, whatever I do, God cannot say that I lack righteousness, because my righteousness stands beside him." This was not a mystical vision. It was the discovery of Christ's imputed righteousness as a concrete daily reality. That truth set him free. Bunyan said, "Then my chains fell off my legs. I was loosed from my sorrow and irons. Truly, I was free." This freedom was not about open prison doors. It was freedom from the inner chains of sin and despair. That same freedom became the heartbeat of his masterpiece, The Pilgrim's Progress. The Pilgrim's Progress is far more than a work of literature. It is a spiritual journey forged in the fire of affliction. Bunyan wrote, "I wish to record what comfort and temptations the saints meet with as they travel through this world." Though his body was confined, his soul soared toward heaven. Out of the narrow cell emerged one of the widest spiritual landscapes in Christian history, a book that became a map of the human soul's journey toward the celestial city. Through its pages, believers of every generation have found a reflection of their own trials, recoveries, and hopes. God shut Bunyan in a prison, but his word was never imprisoned. From that small cell, divine truth flowed out into the world. Many people know Bunyan only for The Pilgrim's Progress, but in that same prison, he wrote over 60 works, each one testifying to God's sovereignty and grace. Among them were Grace Abounding to the Chief of Sinners, The Holy War, The Fear of God. Each book carries the same melody, the glory of God alone and the endurance of the believer through suffering. There is no trace of worldly ambition in his writings, only the humble echo of a soul that glorifies God in every circumstance. Bunyan's life teaches us a single, powerful conclusion. In God's providence, no suffering is ever wasted. His imprisonment, the longing for his family, the poverty, the dark nights of the soul, every thread was carefully woven into the tapestry of God's redemptive plan. In the end, Bunyan could say, "God put me in prison that I might find my comfort, not in the world's consolations, but in himself alone." And from that prison came a message that still travels the world. When God allows his children to enter the winter of suffering, he is preparing them for the harvest of faith. So the next time you face hardship, remember John Bunyan. Winter may be cold and lonely, but it is never wasted. For in God's hands, even the darkest prison can become the garden of eternal fruit. And in our next video, we'll reflect on 5 spiritual lessons we can learn from John Bunyan's suffering. Thank you for watching.